this film is a vision. No one can take that away from The Astrologer. I will argue till I am red in the face, which I probably am right now.
Yeah, but that's just natural. Come on.
No, I am like blood. I feel blood rushing into my skull talking about this movie because it is one of the most mind-altering experiences I've had watching a movie. Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And this is GenreVision. GenreVision is a weekly movie club where we discuss horror films, action movies, fantasy flicks, sci-fi cinema, and more. And this week, The Astrologer. So before we talk about this, I think we should preface it by saying this is a notoriously difficult movie to get a hold of. It was essentially lost for a long time. There was a copy that was put out there.
Apparently found in a big box of porn.
Well, that's one of the prints, yes, that has apparently been found, and I don't believe it's been restored, but it is screened at certain theatrical screenings over the last few years. But there are reasons that it seems like it's hung up in terms of getting a legit release, and it may never get a legit release, but a version of the DCP was obtained and then I believe was upscaled to 2K. And this is the version that Travis and I were able to get a hold of. There is another version. I don't know if it's the same quality version or not, but there is another version that we will be linking to on GenreVision.com in the post for this episode. And I more than the majority of movies we have ever done on this show, you kind of need to watch The Astrologer to understand what we're about to talk about. But I don't want to be the reason people see The Astrologer.
Yeah, that is a take. But, just in terms of logistics here, we have had some confusion expressed to us about which movie we're covering, because it turns out there was another movie called The Astrologer from 1975 that is unrelated. This is The Astrologer, dated 1976, directed by a guy named Craig Denney.
Yes. I mean, the problem being that this movie has also been quoted as coming out in 1975. The other movie is also known as Suicide Cult.
But that's not the one we're covering today.
That's not the one we're talking about. Maybe we'll talk about that movie one day. Who knows? But for right now, we only have room for one The Astrologer in our lives.
I was operating under the delusion that this would fit neatly into some vacant puzzle piece place in my brain. It's like, oh, that's where that fits now. No, the Astrologer kind of refuses to fit in any space you make for it in your brain because it is... It's an incredibly unique experience.
Does every low-rent, crummy movie that you see from this time start with a title card that says, Craig Denney's theatrical film version? Not Craig Denney's theatrical film version of The Astrologer.
Which implies that there's some other version of The Astrologer. No.
It says Craig Denney's theatrical film version. Then next card, cast credits. I'm like, what do you... So already we're off to a what the fuck start.
It immediately gives you an impression of something being off because you're like, this isn't how credits were done at the time.
It's not right. Like, it immediately sets the tone of this is not right. And the movie only continually reinforces that in everything.
We get fucking voiceover at the beginning too from this character who introduces himself. We see this younger version of this character. It cranes down and he's this member of this crowd. And he's standing in front of a circus. And the biggest reason we know he's standing in front of a circus is because there's a big camper trailer with the word circus spray painted on the side.
I want to give a very broad generalization about what happens in this movie. Because I'm telling you all right now, if you want to listen to this episode, I kind of think you have to watch the movie. Because there is no universe where we're going to hit on every single piece of dark magic that's going on in The Astrologer. So
no, and the movie makes so little sense that, we're going to basically cover a bunch of disjointed and jumbled. It's going to sound like we're talking about 3 or 4 movies.
The broad stroke is Craig Denney, who is the star, director, I believe producer as well, and probably writer.
He credited somebody else, but this guy wrote it.
He plays a character called Craig, who is a circus palm reader, psychic charlatan, and admits to this in the opening voice that he calls himself a professional stealer, or legal stealing or something like that.
Right. He says his whole business of stealing from people is legitimized somehow.
He has dreams of becoming a world famous astrologer and eventually does obtain that, but has a bunch of kooky adventures where he's stealing diamonds and he's sent to prison and all this kind of stuff happens to him. And it is a rise and fall story, eventually. But this is one of those movies where I also recommend people need to read up about this as much as they can. And also know that whatever they read up is not verified information. There's so little actual facts that we know about this movie. But the information that we were able to look up about it tells us a lot about this person who's headlining this movie. This is his movie. This is a vanity project, and I've called it the vainest vanity project I've ever witnessed, and I stand by that. One of the pieces of information that I think is good context to have is that possibly, because again, this is not verified, this was originally going to be a television series about this guy, Craig Denney, playing the character Craig.
Yeah, well, evidently this guy, Craig Denney, had produced some like television shows of himself doing astrology readings. And there is some information out there that he had made some money doing like astrology stuff with some sort of early computer program in the 70s, like distributing horoscopes via computer program. And again, I have no idea how much any of this is apocryphal because it honestly sounds just as plausible as the movie we're about to describe.
Yes. So, but the thing that I want to get to is that it was possibly originally conceived to be a television series that was then turned into a movie. It was apparently shot kind of over a period of about 5 years or something before it got distributed. And knowing that, it does add some, I think, necessary structure. Structure's the totally wrong word, but it adds some necessary kind of blanket that you can put over this movie when you realize, aha, this was originally going to be a TV series, because it feels like 13 episodes of a show in 77 minutes.
I can see how he got sort of ideas like, these sort of like kung fu, where it's Kane's adventures, it's highly episodic. The movie is an incredibly episodic film, and it moves at a pace that feels awfully choppy. I mean, there's sort of a propulsiveness to this that is trying to make it feel like really grand and like rollicking cinema. It's trying to be sort of antithetical to that more sleepy TV feel in a lot of ways. But still, it's very episodic, and you get the sense that like there are certain sequences that are long-winded because he wanted to use this unlicensed music cue and just fill the screen time while this music cue played out because he really liked the song. Evidently, the guy was a Moody Blues fan, let me tell you.
We tried to look into that. When the Moody Blues Tuesday Afternoon came on the soundtrack, I lost my mind for the sixth time. And I was like, how are the Moody fucking Blues in this? And then at multiple points again, Nights in White Satin starts playing.
Sure.
I'm flabbergasted that like it's in this movie, and they are credited in the credits on the print that we saw. But then looking stuff up, it's like, well, that's been part of the reason that it may never get released because, licensing the songs again for a release is a big thing. And apparently he did not properly clear using those songs when he made the movie. Like, so it's like the man, Craig Denney, is this fascinating, seeming scam artist of a person that he also brought that to the movie he made. But the movie that he made is just a power fantasy for him playing himself because his character's name's Craig. So eventually in the movie, this character, Craig, starts making movies. And the first movie he makes is called The Astrologer, that will star him as this super famous worldwide zodiac guy who's also the president's astrologer, I think.
Nah, he works for the Navy. He does like important astrology for the Navy because the Navy needs horoscopes or something.
They're talking to the president, like not like through the phone. Like the Navy's talking about, like, we gotta get the president this thing or something. But I think in the show, well, in the movie The Astrologer that's in the movie The Astrologer, I think he was like the president's guy.
It's really difficult to talk about this because this movie has this incredibly recursive vortex where it spirals in on itself like a nautilus shell. Like there is this moment where the character, after going on all these adventures, he's like, I want to start making movies. Say, I'm going to make a movie called The Astrologer. And then we watch this movies version of events that we've already kind of seen in the movie, but are now playing out as a movie within the movie. And they're watching it in like they're watching it at the premiere. And I really had like a break at this point where I was like, this has ceased to make any sense to me. The scenes, you could have arranged them in any order from this point forward and nothing would have surprised me. Like it kind of broke something within me where I was like, this has reached a point where the Ouroboros has fully circled around and begun to eat itself.
When people describe movies as being dreamlike, I think what they're usually actually talking about is there's this kind of weird, airy aura about dreams.
Sure.
This is actually more, to me, like a real dream where it just transitions happen suddenly and like there's no context or information in between to let you know what's actually going on. But the dream that you're experiencing expects you to know what's going on. And in a dream, because you're in your own fucking head, it does. Like on some weird subconscious level, it makes sense to you. The problem is we're watching Craig Denney's dream unfold on screen, and it makes sense to no one but him.
Yeah, a dream of himself. You know, he is dreaming all of these fantasies about who he is or wants to be. You know, he's finally getting the opportunities to kind of, you know, go on all these vacations he wants to be on, and he wants to be seen being powerful on these vacations. Like there's this big section of the film set in Tahiti, and I do believe he went and shot it in Tahiti because there's a bunch of stuff on location there. And it's just so much about this power fantasy of him being, you know, a fugitive hunted down by the Kenyan government and, you know, agents trying to get him. And, you know, there's this like kind of persecution fantasy. Like often people in power fantasies often see themselves as persecuted because it makes them seem more important. And it makes them feel smarter and better about themselves that they can continue to elude people who are persecuting them or pursuing them. That's all present here. You know, we've seen that in so many like self-aggrandizing productions from indie filmmakers. It's that persecution complex. It's very strong here. Very strong. A heady brew, very potent.
This brew is poison. I do think we need to put that out here.
Oh, it's a narcissistic fart cloud. It stinks.
It's worse than that. Because here's the thing. We have covered narcissistic movies on the show aplenty. We've done all of Neil Breen's movies. We enjoy Neil Breen a lot, but it is unavoidable that his projects are narcissistic. It's why he's cast as the lead in every one of his movies, and he has weird, bad ideas in his head that he gets out in his fiction. But Craig Denney is worse because at least Neil Breen is compellingly weird. Craig Denney as a character, because we should say he's not playing the character called Craig Denney. He's like Craig something Alexander. But when he makes the movie, The Astrologer, in the movie, he has a talk with his, he was like, yeah, I'll star in it. We'll use all real first names, which is what they're doing in this movie that we're watching. But Craig Denney as a man, as a man on film, is an absolute void of charisma.
Oh, yeah, he is a walking charisma vacuum. I mean, reports are, and of course none of this can be verified, that Denney was very embarrassed by the final product.
So feeding into all this power fantasy stuff, there's sequences like he will read people's charts to them, specifically like some tribal leader that he talks to and tells them, you know, it's like, oh, he's got so many wives. And we just have to sit there and watch this guy spin zodiac bullshit, which I don't know what the movie thinks about astrology. He seems to admit from the opening that he is scamming people, that he's a scam artist. But throughout the movie, he has moments where he is arguing for a specific type of astrology. Like he talks about, like, I can't remember what the name of his type of astrology is, but he talks about, in negative terms, tropical astrologists, like astrologers. Like, we're going to leave them in the dust. Because eventually he creates this giant astrology empire. And so it's like, well, does he really believe in his own bullshit? Does the movie?
Well, the movie argues at the beginning that he knows he's stealing from people. So I think he knows that he is a scam artist, and this is like a confession at the beginning of the film. But throughout the rest of the movie, he does not bring up this idea again and again that he's scamming people. So you kind of fall under a certain toxic spell with the film where you think like, is this guy fully in on this? Like, is he really getting high in his own supply? Like, does he believe any of this? Because he seems to be so invested in it, and he talks about it in such a way where it's like, this is all incredibly detailed mumbo jumbo about astrology, where I'm like, is he for real? Like, is he a psychic? Like, I had to question at some points during the movie because the reality is so hazy and tenuous.
And this is all colored by information that possibly he really was an astrologist before, during the production of this. But in the end, I mean, we're jumping around and I'm not going to say anything specific, but like in the end, it seems to be a very definitive statement of like, no, the astrology is not true. And he is, he has his fall from grace. And that's not like a through line in the movie, because this movie does attempt to have through lines, but they are so bizarre. Like, we have to at least talk about the main romance of this film.
Where to begin? A few scenes after Craig Denney's character Alexander is introduced in his adult form, he reads the fortune of some woman at the circus or carnival or what have you. And this woman's name is Darian?
Yes.
Turns out Darian is played by Craig Denney's real life cousin, Darian. And so Mr. Denney proceeds then to have an on-screen romance between these two characters. And she's around for, I think, one or two scenes after their sort of initial, I guess you'd call it a meet cute, where he reads her palm. And then shortly thereafter, she's totally gone from the film until the last 20 or so minutes. Totally gone. I don't think she's ever spoken of until that moment, until that scene where he's like, I think I've, the guy comes to her and it's like, I think I've found her.
Yes, it turns out that I guess he hired, at some point,
he hired a PI or somebody to find her.
It seems to me that he was married, but then he gets into this business of diamond smuggling, which is propositioned to him by some nebulous rich people who take him to a picnic in a graveyard.
And they're laughing the whole way.
Yeah, I mean, this was the most Neil Breen scene to me, where it's like the nondescript rich people just stating, what it's like, they're saying the truth, man. The rich people are saying what we all know they're saying, but they're saying the quiet part out loud in a graveyard picnic. Like, and they're hiring him, I guess, to steal jewels, and he gets caught. So we got to talk about the editing in general, because one of the funniest things about the movie is the editing. Oh yeah. Like, for all of the laughs you and I actually did really have throughout the watch of the film. Oh yes. I laughed a lot through this. Like, our review sounds very negative so far because we're having a difficult time with it, but you and I did in fact laugh a lot. And the primary reason for our laughing while watching this movie was the edit. The edit is downright hilarious. There are lots of corny transitions, flips and wipes and star wipes and all this crazy kooky shit that he put in there because it was available to him and thought it looked cool. Astrology, I mean, stars. Of course, yeah. You gotta. I believe that's as much thought as he put into it. It's like, well, it's a star, like astrology. Maybe, then again, you and I are all for the argument that directors just do things because they think they're cool, and there's really not much depth to it beyond that. So the scene transitions and the sort of ruthless pace this movie keeps up, in the macro sense, I guess, are nothing short of like hilarious. So this whole idea of like him being in sort of like this marital bliss with this woman, Darian, quickly ends because there's some sort of financial trouble. Like, he can't pay, despite being a very successful scam artist. He can't pay his rent at the fucking circus or whatever. And so the circus man comes and smashes his car windows and he has to escape. And his wife, the wife character, Darian, is not heard from for many, many minutes. He meets up then with these bizarre richos in the graveyard. There's this one red-haired woman and this other very nondescript guy. And they say, hey, look, if you really want to make some money, help us smuggle some diamonds. Ha 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 ha. Cut to several years later, he's in Kenya in prison for smuggling diamonds. We never saw diamond smuggling. No, I mean, we see some diamonds like shown in that scene in the graveyard where they're like, here are some diamonds. This is what we're doing.
And then he's just boom in prison in Kenya, and it's like a hell of a cut. And one cut like that, like one transition forward like that, I think I asked you like how many reels were missing, and I think you're like, no, dude, this is just the edit of the movie. Like this is how weird it is.
And that happens again and again. And I mean, it happened 2 minutes into the movie when he's doing his voiceover about like, yeah, you know, I'm a scam artist, and my mom was a psychic too. Cut to a flashback scene of him and his mom, and she's like, I heard you were putting paint thinner on pouring paint thinner on a police car. And the kid's like, oh, come on, Mom. You've been talking to that lady down the street. I ain't been doing that. Hard cut to police stepping out of a car, and one of them going, hey, that's that kid who was putting paint on our car.
There are 3 or 4 scenes of him of this character as a kid in the movie. Different actor every scene. I think the mom character is seen twice and is played by 2 different actresses. And it's all supposed to be about the same time. It just shows you like, we're shooting this over a course of 5 years. Like I'll get the scenes I need when I need them.
But that kind of stuff happens. There's a moment that we can't say. Like I could say what happens, but I can't say what the character says in that scene in which a character is shot, and there is a hard cut to Craig and this woman who just shot a man in cold blood on a sailboat at like sunset. And
wait, she doesn't come with him.
She doesn't?
I don't think so.
Travis,
so
I'll believe anything you say. You could tell me anything happened in this movie and I can't argue.
Okay, so after he is in prison in Kenya for smuggling diamonds, he then gets out of prison for, plot reasons. And there is this brief pulp adventure sequence that is very racist, obviously. It's very much like Darkest Africa bullshit where he's wandering through the jungles of, I don't know, Oxnard, California.
I was going to say, yeah, it's Darkest Backyard. It's like such...
Yeah.
Oh, the quicksand scene. Jesus Christ, Travis.
Oh, yeah. The lady with the red hair from the graveyard laughing picnic scene, she falls in a big bucket of oatmeal and dies. And he's just like, whatever. Doesn't reach for a hand. There's a bunch of snakes that bite the other guy, and he goes on this like snake shooting rampage as a result of it. He's like, I kill all snakes. And I had to ask, like, how many years before Raiders of the Lost Ark was this? And it's many, Raiders of the Lost Ark was 81. So after that, he escapes to Tahiti after, I believe. And then he is being hunted down by this dude who we met at the prison in Kenya. The one guy with the scar on his chin, who's probably my favorite actor in the movie. He's really good. And this blonde woman comes into this guy's office, evidently some, government agent or police officer. And she's like, I know this guy you're looking for. I can lead you to him, or I'll bring him to you. And she does so, sort of traps him at the bar, gets him really shit-faced, and brings him to the agent. And
the bar. Let's talk about the bar.
Do we have to? I mean, we can get back to the bar in a moment, but
that's the thing. This movie, it never ends, really.
And again, it's just it loops back and cycles upon itself, and you remember it's insane. So she ends up bringing this. She ends up bringing Alexander, our protagonist, to this Kenyan cop that's been pursuing him, and he's like, finally found you. And the blonde woman's like, hey, are you gonna pay me for bringing Alexander to you? He's like, no, you're no longer necessary, get the fuck out of here. And she says an incredibly shocking racist slur, then shoots him in the head. And about 2 frames after that, we're sailing away on a boat to the Moody Blues.
Tuesday fucking afternoon. Then we get a huge, I don't think it's the entirety, but the majority of Tuesday afternoon plays out over a montage of calendar pages flying by as Craig is on this sailing trip.
Oh wait, no, the sailing sequence is before. The sailing sequence is before the guy is shot in the head.
Travis,
the sailing sequence is after the lady falls in the big bucket of oatmeal in the jungle.
I don't know if that read on Mike. I just had a legitimate sigh.
I believe you, because trying to remember this movie is a nigh impossible task, because it's strung together with just this gossamer thin sense of diegesis. Like the whole reality is so unbelievable, and yet there's something toxically attractive about it. Like, let's talk about this bar montage. So the guy is in Tahiti. he's at this bar, and there's a whole bunch of weird characters at the bar. People are drinking. There's this like a bunch of amorous couples sitting around, and it's this music montage, and you can sense that there's like love in the air. And then all of a sudden, like this table of tourists, there are two like middle-aged women. They just start taking their tops off, just apropos of nothing.
No, they do it because there's a guy sitting between them. Maybe he's a pimp. I don't know. And people walk up to this booth that they're in, and they point at the women, and then the pimp, I guess he's a pimp. I don't know.
I'm watching. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That seems to track. That take seems to track now.
And he points at them, and then they just take their tops off, and ta-da. This is all intercut in this montage of like, there's some other couple that are making googly eyes at each other. Then there's also an extreme fisheye lens POV shot of going into the men's bathroom. Whose POV is that?
Yeah, nobody's, and it's following somebody too. It's like it's tracking them behind, and it's like, well, who is this person that we're following?
One of the guys in the bathroom like looks into the camera like, oh, it's a guy. Like I'm looking into a person.
And you can see the camera operator's shadow when they're walking down the hall. It's like, what the fuck is going on here?
Well, I mean any technical flubs are so low on the totem pole of like, what the fuck is going on?
It didn't even read as a technical flub to me. It read as the like surreal aspect of the film, like really like rearing through and like poking me in the eye and going, you're being forced to acknowledge just how weird this is in this moment. Like, because the camera eventually settles on a urinal, and there's a close up of several cigarette butts in the bottom of the urinal, and the urinal's being flushed and flushed. And you're like, can you imagine being Craig Denney and thinking, oh man, I got to get this great shot of cigarette butts being flushed down the urinal? What?
That was clearly, if not the intent, the end product was like, we got it, because this entire montage ends with a single cigarette butt managing to find its way into one of the holes in the urinal and get flushed. And then we cut to a new scene. That's the button on that montage.
Well, and here's the thing, like the montage is not, it's not like a worthless, it's not like a totally worthless piece of filmmaking in some regards. Cause like there's something about that montage that works in this like weird, smoky, hazy way. Like there are certain sequences in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, for instance, where you get lost in the sort of Vegas smoke and haze and the sense of time lost and the psychedelia of it. There is something in that bar montage that reminded me of that, where you get caught in this sort of persistent present, this ever now, where day and night don't mean anything, and time moves forward in unexpected fits and starts. There are certain scenes that last, I don't know, symphonic length, because he's like, oh, I got to play 5 minutes of Nights in White Satin because this is what I want. This is my vision.
With stuff that we've done, like, Neil Breen before, anything like that, the cognitive dissonance that I experience with The Astrologer is never really present in those kinds of experiences, because this is hypnotically watchable. Like it draws you in with just how insane it is as a piece of film construction and attempt at narrative. At the same time, it is one of the most loathsome film experiences I have ever had.
It's really disgusting. There's this moment when Craig Denney's character is screening his film
starring him.
And I'm going to send you this screenshot in Discord so you can see what I'm saying, where it is a reaction shot of Craig Denney sitting in the audience, looking up at the screen, beaming at this film within a film, this paean within a paean, this sort of like idol to himself that he's built within an idol to himself. And I was like, I have to be rid of this. Like there's some part of me, I think, that does not want to remember this.
No, like it feels like this movie, like you're saying, when you're talking about need to be rid of it, you have to exercise this, and it's still in me. And we have not even talked about the craziest shit that happens in this movie.
Oh yeah? Like the slow motion dinner argument scene?
Let's talk about shit on life.
Oh, shit on life. Yeah, shit on life, pal. Remember he marries a woman earlier in the movie, right? When he's working at the carnival, and then the movie forgets about her for an hour or more.
Reminder, in real life, his cousin.
Yeah, his actual real cousin, Darian. later on, after he's experienced his like astronomical rise and he's very rich, he hires this PI to find, I guess, or team of PIs to find his old wife, and she's become a hooer and a junkie, and is, I don't know, in some sort of slum and in some sort of state of bombed out decay. And he goes and finds her, and there are 3, I guess, nihilistic slogans written on her mirror. The first one is shit on life. It's a good use of a verb.
I mean, the other ones are hell is earth and God is dead, which it's like, those are shit on life is unique. I've never heard that specific combination of words in that order. So props to shit on life. Whoever,
yes.
When Craig Denney, because I'm sure he was the one who wrote that thing on the mirror in lipstick, like he was like, yeah, oh man, that's so dark. Like, and props to him for coming up with shit on life at least. But yes, this woman who's his love, he comes in and she doesn't even recognize it. She's like, you here, buddy? It's $20. Yeah, all that stuff. And then he sits down and is like, Denney, don't you see it's me, Craig Denney. Like
your cousin Craig. I'm here to love you back to life, lady.
It's your cousin Marvin Bear. I'm sorry. My brain is broken. So he rescues her from squalor, makes her his wife, and now she can live in his super rich life where he's created this astrology industry where he's also giving astrological advice to the Navy to help find like sunken submarines and
it's some kind of bizarre submarine shit, but
bro, how
this newfound bliss with the rediscovered Darien does not last, because they have an argument that we don't hear, but we do see it in rather exquisite detail as they're eating dinner.
This is another moment where it's like I have to let the entirety of a song play out during a scene.
Right. All 7 minutes of this fucking 70s B-side or whatever it is. And this dinner scene in this fancy restaurant plays out entirely in slow motion with no dialogue. Dialogue is all silent. And there's just so much throwing of liquid and wine, like in all the crystalline drops falling off Craig Denney's face.
I mean, you got to be like, when we were in the middle of that sequence, both of us were like, what the fuck is going on? Stop this. Stop it now. Like, and this is so ridiculous. But then the payoff of her slow motion throwing her drink in his face was, again, broke me. Like,
yeah. She looks like Lana Del Rey, having a temper tantrum. I'll send you a screenshot of this because the wine splooshing out of his eye sockets as it rockets into his face is very funny.
Essentially, and this is what we're saying. You have to see this movie to understand just what's going. I mean, you won't understand what's going on, but you will at least understand some of the experience of watching this. There is an acknowledgement in like the last, 15, 20 minutes that the character of Craig is not a good dude.
Yeah, he's not destined to win here.
In a moment of what had to be unaware brilliance, this character that we've seen go through all this, and he is this absolute just, everything he touches becomes gold, and we don't even see how it becomes gold. Like when he's like, hey, I want to make a movie, cut to the premiere of that movie.
Oh yeah, no time wasted there.
Yeah, we have to appreciate the brevity of the edit at least, and it's again one of the best sources of comedy. But
when it is brief, because a lot of times it's just like, oh, I have all this footage of like pearl diving in Tahiti that I'm going to put to 5 minutes of Nights in White Satin.
Yes,
and I want to show every frame of it because it's like beautiful, like slice of life texture stuff, like all the shit that he shot on the sailboat.
Yes, but so in Act 13, like he is revealing himself to not be a good guy as a personality. Like before, he is not really showcasing him being like a jerk or an asshole personality-wise. He's just awesome white man. But in this last chunk of whatever, he starts to be a dick. Like he's about to be shooting some movie and he goes to some actress's mansion and sits on outside and tells her like, yeah, we are going to be shooting, but you're not going to be in it. I'm firing you and I'm casting my wife in the role. And this actress who's like Zsa Zsa Gabor parody with a wackadoo accent, like gets up and walks away. And Craig tells his producers, like, that's how you treat actresses. You just dump them and whatever. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, he is actually aware enough that this character that we've been watching has to fall. Like, that was actually a moment where I was like, oh my God, does he know? Does he know he's telling a story? Like, he's not just living out his weird boner fantasies of like, yeah, and also I find subs. Like, he's like, no, I have to make this guy unlikable and have a tragic ending to him.
Yeah, and I don't understand how this movie justifies this character like having all these untold millions, because he's just bullshitting people, and there doesn't really appear to be any like appreciable difference that it makes to the Navy that, you know, he can read a submarine's horoscope or whatever the fuck he does. But there is a moment that, you know, foreshadows the downfall here. You know, with, I don't know, 8 minutes of the running time left, there are two people from the bank that come to the house and they're like, well, Alexander owes us like $6 million. Do you know anything about that? And I think it's either Darian or his like weirdo Colonel Sanders friend.
Yeah, it's his William Sanderson buddy, like, who's also, I think his name's like Arthur, and his character's name is also Arthur.
Doesn't surprise me in the least.
But he was the carnival barker at the beginning that they were in business together. And when he comes back after his adventures in Kenya and Tahiti, he reunites with him and he becomes kind of his right-hand man. And he's like, you're going to be like his producer, essentially.
Yeah, they paint his hair gray.
And they give him a spirit gum ass mustache.
Yeah, they do. It's very funny. Yeah, this guy's performance again is somehow warmer than Craig Denney's, but also more like, I don't know. It's like a ghost of a performance. You know, you feel bad for him. But anyway, this is a movie you and I laughed at a lot, and it's strange. I thought we would laugh more talking about it. But it turns out it's actually not a funny movie to talk about, because the experience of having to remember the film enough, even when you've had conversations about it and written things down about it, and you've recounted the plot to your friend a bunch of times, and the task of having to review it is not an easy one, because it's not a normal film.
Well, I want to roll out the last couple of scenes, and then we'll talk about that, because the downfall starts, everything starts falling apart. Nobody wants his horoscopes anymore and all this kind of stuff. And eventually his wife, after drowning him in restaurant drink.
A glass of Chardonnay.
She
takes a lover.
She takes a lover who I think is some associate of his or something. There is a moment that fucking killed me, where the lover comes over and comes in through the front door, and Darian's right there, and she's like, "Oh, you know, Craig's here. He's upstairs." Cut to Craig standing like he's what, like 13 feet away or something, like
standing in the dark at the top of the stairs, just like glowering down, and then he turns the light on like he's a ghost in PT
in plain view, and he's standing up there, and then he turns the light on menacingly, like, and that killed me. But then then we have this scene of the Darian and her lover in bed while a remade version of the fortune teller scene from The Wolfman plays on the TV.
Yeah, they shot their own version of The Wolfman for this movie. Whoa! Yes,
and The Wolfman was referenced earlier.
That revelation that late in the film is like, wait, what? What am I watching?
That's every 3 minutes with this movie. So we're watching it, and it's like, you know, even a man who is pure of heart, can become a wolf. And Travis was like, what's going to happen? So, and I was like, he's got to kill them. He's going to step into that room and murder them. And like I summoned him from the seventh circle of hell.
Woof. You opened the box.
Yeah. Yeah. I came. Like, Craig Denney opens the door and is just like, you bitch. And she murders them in cold blood. And then this is when, like, he is everything starts crumbling. Like, his buddy, like, they have to cover it up. They get drunk together and have horrendous drunk acting. But then his buddy, Arthur, whoever, is like, you know, you're a murderer. You're a bullshit. It's all bullshit. I'm leaving you. And then in like the last 2 minutes, we get a newspaper montage where, of course, there have been multiple newspaper montages, and every newspaper, Alexander the Astrologer is the big headline over headlines of, like Ford needs assistance in Cambodia or something. Like, no. Alexander would, of course, take the headline away from the president. Like,
yeah, and they show lots of like German and French newspapers as well. I don't know, to show how internationally renowned this Alexander character was. But
again, this is one of those like, does he know this is funny? Because there's no other way to read this as comedy. There's occasional mentions of his mother, who was a psychic. Like there's a shot of him and his sister, like who I guess is in a scene and doesn't have a line.
Sure.
But it's like, okay, his mom exists. And in this ending newspaper montage, there's, of course, the headline is like, Alexander predicts mother's recovery will be great, like because of astrology. And the immediate next newspaper is like, Alexander's mother is dead. It's like, there's no other way to read that than comedy, but it can't be being read for comedy because the big sad music is playing at the end, and we have a final shot of him sitting by his pool, which, by the way, the borders are adorned with the signs of the zodiac, and he's sitting and the sun is setting, and then a quote from King Lear fills the screen. And that's the fucking end of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's okay. The Astrologer is a movie unlike anything I have ever seen. And I've seen vanity projects. I've seen super gonzo amateur cinema.
We've seen plenty of outsider films.
I've seen trash. I've seen things that were clearly made for an audience of one. I have never seen something as audaciously vain, absolutely impenetrably bizarre, and mind-breaking as The Astrologer. It's that landmark, but at that same time, I cannot in good conscience tell people to watch this movie for an enjoyable experience. Because like you said, we had a good time watching and laughing at the movie, but thinking about the movie again, I'm fucking sweating and I have a headache. Like it's physically affecting me trying to recall this movie. Like there is a part of me that hopes this never gets a proper release. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Yeah, I think it being an outsider film, I think it's an outsider film that kind of is best suited for the fringe. It's a movie I've described to you as saying like right now in this moment, I'm not sure if this film is even real. Like that was the kind of, break with the diegesis of the film that I had where I was just like, is this a thing that somebody really did? I was in such a state of disbelief. And I think that that's where it belongs. Again, this is all apocryphal because, people say that this guy, Craig Denney, was really embarrassed by the film and basically wanted it destroyed and, lost time. Is that true? We'll never know.
There's print ads for after the movie. He was trying to make money off of it somehow.
Yeah. But then, there are these things like, who was Craig Denney and what happened to the guy? Well, who was Craig Denney? Well, there's not a whole lot of information about him. Evidently, he was some guy who tried to make money, with a whole bunch of astrology related stuff because he thought it was some kind of gold mine. He thought it was the new California gold rush. What happened to him? Nobody knows.
He possibly faked his own death. Like a large source of information about him was like I believe his manager. So it's like, there's like this weird pro wrestling element where it's like, I don't know what the hype and the character is and the truth is.
Yeah, and the kayfabe it has now become the reality.
That's all we have.
The movie might actually be the truest document about who he really was as a person, and that's crazy.
Well, that's why I say like this is a vision from a visionary.
Well, by all accounts, and by all accounts, I really just mean the movie because that's
the only account.
Yeah, he appears to be somebody who wanted to spend a great deal of time and money building this shrine to himself. And like people don't even know where he's from. There's articles say he may have been Canadian. Well, okay, that wouldn't be a huge shocker. He could have been. Nobody knows if he's still around. It is an experience I don't think we'll ever have again on GenreVision.
Honestly, it's kind of an experience I don't ever want to have again. I valued the experience I had.
Sure.
But I think if I had another one like this, I think it would be like, I can't go looking for these kinds of movies anymore. Like, cause it's snapping parts of my brain.
See, this is your you open the box, we came moment.
Yes.
You know, where you like to go hunting for all sorts of obscure films and lost films and films that have been discovered in, piles of, discarded celluloid. That's like, oh, I scanned this and look at this crazy movie. It's been totally lost to time. Well, sometimes you turn up a movie that may in fact kind of be cursed. Like there is something about this movie that feels magically, spiritually not correct.
Shudder, season 2 of Cursed Films, do The Astrologer, because
Absolutely.
this is cursed. This is your description of it as the lament configuration is spot on, because there is one other movie, and it doesn't even reach the levels that I felt with The Astrologer that I'm going to talk about as we move over to the shelf, that I had that experience with. But this really did change what I believed about film. Like, and that can't happen. I wouldn't want that to happen like a lot because I can't rewire my brain that many times without the neurons exploding.
Yeah. We are changed. We are changed. But if you wanted to maybe touch on some of the things that The Astrologer touches on, but in a safer fashion, you'd go to the shelf where you can be safe and okay. And that's where we want you to be. This is a collaborative thing that Drew and I do, and we invite you to do it as well. You can pull something off your shelf and tell us what it is at GenreVision.com. It can be a pairing for today's movie. It can be a substitute for today's movie. Just go to GenreVision.com, find the post for this episode on the main page, and leave your comment in the comments section. What are you pulling off the shelf today, Drew?
The only other movie that I can even think of that reaches the same level of insanity that I experienced with the Astrologer is The Evil Within. This is from 2017. It was directed by Andrew Denney of the Denney fortune. It was attempted to be filmed over a decade or so, and he died before it was totally put together. His producer, I think his lawyer, was the one who eventually got the film cut together and released. The Evil Within, it has that same, like, this is an irresponsible movie. Like, this is an ill-advised, toxic movie.
This should not exist. Yeah.
I don't want to banish anything out of existence, but like The Evil Within, it's a movie that like this can never ever be made again because this is this is a person on screen. Because like Getty spent tons of money creating his own camera rigs and stuff for shots, for creating original animatronics and stuff that he built and operated himself. And it's more digestible than The Astrologer because it's a horror movie that has some kind of like some level of familiarity narratively. You're like, oh, okay, like this is weird and really gross. Not like, ew, barf gross, but like soul gross. Like SOUL. That it could only come from one person. But at least it's a horror movie. So it's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, there's some dream demon that's trying to get this guy. And, oh, yeah, like Michael Berryman's in it. So it's like, like Sean Patrick Flannery. Dina Meyer's in this movie, Travis.
Real people. Yeah.
Real
people. Yeah.
So it's like there's at least some crossable threshold of sanity that you recognize. But within that, it's something that's just like, this is my God. And being a horror movie and being the kind of subject matter it touches on, it feels like it should be more appropriate for your Hellraiser comparison. But no, The Astrologer is the one. It's like, yes, like Craig Denney stepped out of my television, was just like, we have such sights to show you. But The Evil Within, that's one that is almost impossible for me to recommend because the subject matter is so gross. Like the lead character is playing an autistic person, I believe, and is not autistic, and it's a poo buddy performance. It's a very nihilistic movie.
Shit on life, man.
Shit on life. It's a big shit on life movie for sure. But if you have the stomach for it, if you watch The Astrologer and it's like, I need more like that, this is the only direction I can point you in. So The Evil Within. Travis, what?
Well, I had spoken about what I would choose for my shelf pick this week with you before, but I've actually changed my mind since then. What I would recommend, if you're looking for something that has the same sort of structure narratively, if you can say that The Astrologer has any structure at all, but like the overall template is this sort of like rise and fall epic, that covers many years of a character's life. If you want to watch one that's pretty good, and has, definitely aged in some interesting ways, and some ways not so great, but is also kind of regarded as like a legendary, good movie, is The Jerk, the Steve Martin film. It is a rise and fall story about a character that has a bizarre background. Obviously, it's played for laughs here, and there's quite a few laughs to be found in The Jerk. But it's something that follows that same basic template where somebody goes from rags to riches and then has their downfall, and there's plenty of laughs to be had along the way. And there's also some pretty sweet romantic stuff between Steve Martin's character and the Bernadette Peters character. So it's one of my, I guess, favorite uses of ukulele on film. This sounds nice. Do something nice for yourself. This is what we call self-care. There's a little bit of aftercare involved in watching trash, garbage, curse movies like The Astrologer. So you got to treat yourself a little bit and, rest up, hydrate, make sure that you're, practicing good hygiene and all that.
There's a Tremors rewatch in my not too distant future. That will be my exorcism.
Yeah. Bathe yourself in the warm sands of Perfection, Nevada.
We do have the listener shelf picks from our episode on Run Lola Run versus the girl who leapt through time, or I think we had the little girl who conquered time, I believe is how we were referring to it in the episode.
Sure.
Eric Johnson went with Edge of Tomorrow, aka Live, Die, Repeat. Cruise Blunt.
Edge.
Hob had a number of ones. The Princess and the Warrior, Blind Chance, the online novel 253 or Tube Theater, and also their downstairs neighbor's dog named Lola. It's very cute. JT went with Peggy Sue Got Married, which I've never seen. I would be up for doing that on the show. And also the film Lucky from 2020, which is written and I believe starring Bray Grant. Mr. Milksteak went with Boss Level, the 2021 film starring Frank Grillo, and the Rick and Morty episode Mort Dinner, Rick Andre. And Eric Fuchs finally went with The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, the 2008 anime version. Thank you, everybody, for the shelf picks. Now we do have to do some CTA real quick, but stick around because Travis and I are going to talk about one of the most infamous blockbuster sequels of all time. First of all, I want to thank everybody for last week's episode, which was our Q&A episode. Wow, we had so many Q's to A, so thank you, everybody, for stepping up to the plate and making what was a really good episode. And I'm very happy to see some of the responses to that episode. I love when we get to do these Q&A episodes, and y'all make doing it worth it. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Amen.
And we have great news in that we have 2 new reviews on the Apple Podcast Store. And Travis, why don't you give us our first review?
Sure thing. Today's first review comes to us from BFD Tiger from Ireland. They say, I first discovered this podcast as they had reviewed a movie I was interested in. However, it was far more of a deep dive than I was expecting, and as a result, I've decided to work my way through the pretty sizable catalog. Listening to the guys discuss movies I've never even seen has inspired me to go watch them. Keep up the good work. 5 stars.
Thank you so much, BFD Tiger. It's always nice for me to hear that people are listening to episodes of movies they don't watch and enjoying the episodes on their own. That's one of the biggest compliments I think we can hear. So thank you very much. The next review comes from The Shmoo from United Kingdom of Great Britain. They say, 5 stars. Not only am I really enjoying working my way through the archives, I'd like to thank you both for talking about Pin, thus proving I did not imagine this film in my teens because no one I've spoken to has a clue what I'm talking about.
You know that movie where Jonathan Banks plays an uncredited creepy mannequin in a Canadian incest film?
Yeah, Terry O'Quinn and oh gosh, what's What's Cube guy's name?
Oh,
Something Mitchell.
Gosh, don't ask me of this right now. My Canadian film brain is shut down.
Yeah, my whole brain is shut down. So but yes, this is another awesome thing where, you know, we like to find those little gems and highlight gems that maybe don't get the recognition they deserve, and apparently to prove that they actually exist. So thank you so much to the Shmoo and BFD Tiger. If you want to be cool like them, you can go to the Apple Podcast Store and rate and review the show. They really, really help us out. So getting 2 of these was an absolute treat. If you do leave a written review, we will feature it here on the show. So let's do some currently consuming.
Num 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 num.
And I think we might as well just double team our topic this week.
Yeah, we don't have to spend long on it, but you and I both watched The Matrix Reloaded for the first time in quite a while.
Yes, I mean, I did an episode on the Matrix trilogy films with Nick Murray on this show when it was the Drew Reviews, and I don't think I've rewatched them since then, so it's been many years, and I got the Matrix Trilogy 4K set, which I recommend. It's a great new restoration of these movies.
Mm-hmm. The 4K HDRs are also on HBO Max at the moment.
Yes. And I watched the first 2 movies. I've not rewatched Revolutions yet, but this time around, I think Matrix Reloaded has finally grown on me. I really enjoyed my time with it.
I will never come around to like fully disliking The Matrix Reloaded, but as I watch it, like every time I re-up, I remember like, okay, here's how I can sort of better solidify like why this doesn't fully work for me. You know, obviously I think the biggest issue I have with the Matrix sequels in general is that, you know, they just made one long movie and split it into 2. And so the individual movies suffer as a result. That's more of a formatting issue than anything, because as a full story, it's something else to be appreciated in a different way. This is so wrapped up in trying to not only emulate, but also build and expand this surface cool that really hit pop culture so hard with The Matrix. And it's overall successful at it, but in some things it's just like, why would you do that? Like the Ghost Twins idea is like, just that is aged so poorly and looks so silly. There are also just so many scenes of characters providing flat affect exposition directly at the camera, and not just exposition, but like philosophical musing. And some of it is really fascinating. Like, I'll give the movie that, like, when it's working well and doing that sort of waxing poetic on, you know, the philosophy of causality and, you know, making choices and, you know, all that, like it's working. But a lot of the time it doesn't feel like it's doing the best it can at explaining, you know, why the Matrix is as interesting an idea as it is. Like the best scene of exposition, you know, the thing that I think remember most fondly about the movie is the Oracle's only scene in the film, because Gloria Foster kicks so much ass, or did kick so much ass when she was still kicking. She's just awesome as the Oracle. Loved her.
I unfortunately don't have the energy I would like to have to launch into a full-blown defense of this watch of The Matrix Reloaded, but I really enjoyed it. The surface cool stuff was still surface cool, but I really did get into the actual emotional arc of a lot of the movie, a lot of the philosophy. You know, why I won't argue that it couldn't have been presented in more dynamic ways. It wasn't a drain on the movie to me, and it really clicked with me. I liked a lot about it, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. Now, I will say, I don't think I'll have the same experience with Revolutions, because I think my issues with Revolutions are actually more concrete and more kind of like there's more surface criticism that I think I'm going to get out of this rewatch of Revolutions. I'm hoping the best for the new Matrix movie. I'm glad that Lana Wachowski, that Warner Brothers gave her money to do this and potentially do, because if nothing else, the Wachowskis, the projects that they involve themselves with and often direct, they're never not interesting and unique. They don't all work
No, they're all big swings. They don't all connect, at least not fully, but they're all big swings.
Yeah, go listen to our Jupiter Ascending episode.
Yeah.
I was shocked at how much I liked Matrix Reloaded on this watch. I mean, of course, like comparison wise, it can't hold a candle to the first movie because it's actually a very different movie than the first movie.
It is.
Which is something that, but the problem is that it has to operate as a Matrix sequel and what people expect out of that, as well as a cog in a two-part story. It has a lot that it's shouldering, and I think that's a lot of the reason why it doesn't work for a lot of people is like but upon this watch, a lot of that ambition was really endearing to me because I think the shift in what we view as ambition in blockbuster movies have changed into things that I don't actually see as legitimately artistically ambitious.
Well, it's because the Matrix films, all of them, well, I don't know about this new one, but those first three films were all boundary pushing in some ways, whether it be through effects, practical or digital, filmmaking technique, filmmaking language, sound design. All of them were boundary pushing films.
Well, just, I mean, in the story that they wanted to tell and how they wanted to tell it. And the Wachowskis have rarely, if ever, made a film that's not in some way challenging their audience.
Sure. Yeah, they're all kind of intellectual exercises in a way.
And I mean, even Speed Racer, which I do think is a phenomenal film, it's challenging like people's preconceived notions of how film visually works.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think a lot of their movies don't hit with a lot of people, is because people don't actually want to be challenged with these kinds of experiences for the most part. Like,
no, they want to have a fairly solid idea of the experience that they will have when they go see the movie, and then they want the movie to deliver on that promised experience.
Yeah. So The Matrix Reloaded, I found what it was challenging the audience at the time, and now as a piece of history, it just really clicked with me. I'm very happy that I felt so warmly about it. Again, I'm not expecting that towards Revolutions, but we'll see. Maybe I'll report back on that. But
yeah, maybe you and I should watch that one together. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'd be up for that. That'd be cool.
Cool.
So last but certainly not least, we are closing out with
Comment of the Week.
And this is a kind of perfect synchronicity with next week's episode, because we are doing Empire of the Ants versus Phase 4. I don't know if we said this. I think we said this in the Q&A episode, but we basically gave ourselves 2 anything goes episodes this month because we took a break one week. We did the Q&A, and it's like, oh, we don't really want to come up with a theme month, and don't want to try and schedule a new release. So basically it was like, I can pick one movie that we do, and that was The Astrologer. I have to answer for that someday.
Yeah, and my choice was a double feature or a versus of 2 Killer Ants movies, neither of which I've seen. So we've got Empire of the Ants and Phase 4. And I was thinking to myself, maybe we should do something a bit more like broadly, like crowd pleasing that people would recognize. And then I got a comment.
Yes, the comment originally started from Mr. Milksteak, who said, The Astrologer looks intriguing, but damn it, Phase 4 is the one I'm really giddy with excitement about. To which then commenter JT replied, Phase 4 said, Phase 4 versus Empire of the Ants. I mean, no spoilers, but Phase 4 totally wins. So we have a number of people in the comments, Mr. Milksteak, JT, Hobb, who are aware of Phase 4, who are excited for it. And that juices me up. I can even hear it in my voice right now as The Astrologer tried to tear my soul apart. Hearing that people are stoked for a movie like Phase 4 makes me super stoked to do it. We both have never seen it. I'm going in pretty much blind.
Yep, same here. I know what it is roughly, but again, it's going to be a new experience, and I'm really excited to see that several of you are excited to hear what we got to say about Phase 4 next week.
And we also have Empire of the Ants, a Bird-Eye Gordon movie, which we'll see how much we talk about that after we watch it.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. It might end up being like, yeah, Empire of the Ants, but Phase 4. Like, this is really a Phase 4 episode.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll find out. But either way, I'm stoked. Yeah, like wacky, evil ant movies, I'm down. So we hope you'll be down next week as we conclude this month with Empire of the Ants versus Phase 4. As always, we want to thank you all so much for listening. I'm Drew Deitch.
I'm Travis Newton.
And we will see you next week.
Right here on GenreVision.